An expired listing isn't a dead deal. It's a house that didn't sell for a reason. And about a third of the time, the reason traces back to something on the financing side that never got fixed the first time around. Here's what agents usually assume when they're prospecting expired listings. The price was too high, or the marketing was weak, or the seller was unrealistic. Sometimes true, but there's a category agents miss constantly. Listings that expired because the buyer pool for that property at that price was getting rejected or scared off by a financing issue nobody diagnosed. An HOA with delinquency problems, a property that only qualifies for certain loan types because of its location, a price that sits right at the jumbo threshold and is quietly narrowing the buyer pool who can comfortably finance it. The seller doesn't know any of this, they just know it didn't sell, and they're skeptical of the next agent who calls, which means a generic, let's try again with fresh photos pitch usually falls flat. They've heard some version of that before. There's 3 financing diagnostics worth running before you pitch an expired listing. 1, pull the property's financing profile. Is it a condo in an HOA? Was the HOA's financial standing ever reviewed? A poorly funded or high delinquency HOA can quietly disqualify a huge share of conventional buyers, and most of the listing agents never check this until a buyer's loan falls through. Most management companies will provide the relevant financial summary on request. Number 2, check where the place sits relative to the loan threshold. A home priced above the conforming limit of $832,750 can push buyers into jumbo financing, which potentially narrows the pool and changes the down payment and reserve requirements buyers face. Sometimes a small price adjustment moves a listing back into conventional territory and reopens the buyer pool significantly. A $3,000 price change can matter more than it sounds like it should, purely because of which side of the threshold it lands on. 3, property condition and loan type eligibility. FHA and VA loans have property condition requirements that conventional loans don't. Things like peeling exterior paint, a non-functioning HVAC system, or exposed electrical can trigger required repair before those loan types will fund. If a home is deferred maintenance, it may have quietly disqualified FHA and VA buyers, which can be a large share of the buyer pool depending on the price point and area. Bring me a property's basic facts, price, HOA status, condition, area, and I can usually tell you within a day which one of these issues, if any, was working against the listing. A 4th thing worth pulling, if it exists, the offer history. If the listing had 1 or 2 offers that fell through in underwriting rather than the inspection stage, that's a strong signal the issue was financing related, not buyer interest. Sellers rarely volunteer this, but most listing agents will share if asked directly. An agent brought me an expired listing, a condo, priced fairly for the market, good location, sat for 97 days with almost no offers. Seller was ready to give up and rent it instead. Well, I pulled the HOA financial documents through the management company. The delinquency rate on the HOA dues was 20%, well above the threshold most conventional lenders will approve. The property was effectively uninsurable for the majority of conventional buyers looking in that price range, and nobody told the seller. The 2 showing feedback notes the prior agent had on file even mentioned financing fell through without identifying why. The agent brought that finding back to the seller, not as bad news, but as the actual reason it didn't sell, with a path forward. The HOA board was already working on a plan to bring delinquency down, expected to clear the threshold within about 4 months. The agent relisted with a strategic timeline instead of a price cut, and the listing sold 60 days later to a conventional buyer once the HOA cleared. Same property, same price, same agent. The difference was diagnosing the actual reason instead of guessing at price and marketing. A common mistake is relisting an expired property with the same financing profile and just adjusting the price or marketing without ever diagnosing whether the structural financing issue was the real barrier. Price cuts don't fix HOA delinquency problems or jumbo threshold problems. They just make the seller net less on the property that was going to sell eventually anyways once the actual issue was addressed. The other version of this mistake is not asking the previous agent or the seller for the actual showing feedback and any financing details from offers that fell through. That history usually has the answer already sitting in it. Most agents skip straight to a new marketing plan instead of reading what already happened. Before your next expired listing pitch, send me the property's basic facts. I'll run the diagnostics, HOA status if applicable, threshold position, condition flags, and give you something concrete to bring to that seller besides, let's try again. A seller who's been burned once responds differently to an agent who can explain why it didn't sell than to one who just wants another shot at the same approach. If you're prospecting a batch of expired listings this month, send me the list. I can flag which ones have an obvious price threshold or condition issue worth digging into before you spend time on the listing appointment. If expired listings are part of your prospecting, let's build it into your process. It's a 5-minute call that can change how your next listing pitch lands. And if you're not sure whether a given expired listing is worth pursuing at all, that diagnostic call can tell you that too. Sometimes the honest answer is that the seller's price expectations are the real issue, and no financing fix changes that. Better to know before the listing appointment than during it. Text me at 303-596-9077 or teamaronheim.com for realtors.